welcome in. It's Thursday, December 22nd. We're now only 3 days away from Christmas. Can you guys believe that? It's crazy. But now that I actually think about it, we only have three total shows left until the new year. Three shows left until 2023, which should be our year. We should progress at least, right? But we're back with our normal Thursday show. If you're new around here, we usually use these Thursday shows to look over every game of the upcoming NFL week. We usually give our predictions, and we throw in some fantasy pickups along the way if there's any to mention. Since it is at the tail end of the NFL regular season, we usually will update you guys, or I will update you guys on the updated playoff standings. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But hopefully everyone listening is happy and healthy. Hopefully everyone's families are doing good. And hopefully you're getting ready for the holiday. This is your reminder if you haven't got your gifts to go get your gifts. Christmas is only in 3 days. But if you don't stay until the end of the show, which we won't be longer than 35-40 minutes today. If you don't stay to the end of the show, I want to personally wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas. This is your early reminder to drop a like on the show, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and turn those post notifications on, man, because sometimes these drop 12:15, 12:30, 12 on the dot. Just turn those notifications on so YouTube will alert you when I do go live on these shows, right? But without further ado, welcome to now episode 20. Episode 20 is crazy. You guys have been amazing throughout 20. But welcome to episode 20 of the Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Owen Stiftar. Let's see what Week 16 has to offer. So like I mentioned, we're going to get to the updated playoff standings first, and then we're going to get into the weekly matchups. We're going to start on the AFC side of things, then we'll move over to the NFC, as we typically always do. But in the AFC side of things, Buffalo, it is still your number one seed. If they win out, they control their own destiny. They will have home field advantage, which, in my opinion, we're not at the playoffs yet, but I believe Buffalo needs home field advantage to win a Super Bowl. At the 2 seed, you have Kansas City. No surprise there. The 3 seed, Cincy, which I believe if Cincy wins out and Buffalo loses one game, Cincy will actually be your number one seed. So interesting to look out for that. The number 4 seed is Tennessee, who's on a 4-game losing streak. They have to watch out because Jacksonville, who plays tonight, might take their spot. The 5th seed is Baltimore. 6th seed is the Los Angeles Chargers, who are hot right now. And the 7th seed is the Dolphins, despite being on a 3-game losing streak. On the NFC side of things, we have the Philadelphia Eagles as the number 1 seed. They are 13-1, so no surprise there. But they did just lose Jalen Hurts for at least a week, which we'll get into that later. Interesting to see if they could keep winning with a backup quarterback, right? But the number 2 seed is the Minnesota Vikings at 11-3, I want to say. So they're coming off of the biggest comeback in NFL history last week, coming down from 33-0 against the Indianapolis Colts. No surprise, they're number 2. The number 3 seed is the San Francisco 49ers, perhaps the hottest team in football right now, despite having a not one, two, but a third string quarterback helping them maintain a 7-game winning streak as of right now. The 4 seed is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, even though they are 2 games under 500 at 6-8. They're the best team in their division, and that's all that matters when it comes to playoff time. The 5th seed is the Dallas Cowboys, who is the first wild card team in either conference to clinch a playoff spot, despite the loss last week. And the 6th and 7th seed is the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders. They played last week. Obviously, the Giants got the win, and that's why they moved up and Washington moved down. But that's going to do it for your updated playoff standings. I found that graphic there just off the internet, and I think that is way easier to look at than how I did it before. So again, man, you guys said that you loved the new graphic formats, the new graphics that I've used for the topics on hand for whatever show. and I'm just trying to make it more visually appealing, man. But regardless, let's move over to tonight's game where we have the 6-8 Jacksonville Jaguars going into New York MetLife Stadium to take on the 7-7 Jets. This is the battle of the number 1 and number 2 pick of the 2021 NFL Draft. I believe they played last year and the Jets got the upper hand, Zach Wilson. But regardless, this should be an entertaining game, considering the improvement on both sides. Uh, we're obviously talking about both teams involved. But we'll start with the Jags. They've won 4 of their last 6 games, including a great comeback win last week against the Cowboys, which I think Trevor Lawrence had over 500 yards passing. So Trevor Lawrence is developing into a franchise quarterback in front of our eyes. And a lot of a lot of their winning and a lot of the Trevor Lawrence improvement goes to Doug Peterson. Excuse me. I don't know why I said Trent Peterson. Um, but a lot of the Jags' success this season goes to Doug Peterson. He brought Philadelphia their first Super Bowl in 2017. Right now, I mean, last year this Jags team I believe was 2-14 or 2-15. Right now they're 6-8, so definitely not where they want to be, but a big improvement from last season. And Doug Peterson deserves a lot of that credit. But in the last 6 games, where the Jags have won 4, um, Trevor Lawrence has played his best football of this season, and in that stretch, he has 14 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He ranks. There was a graphic ESPN posted on their Instagram, and it showed how Trevor Lawrence was basically top 5 in every major statistical category since in this 6-week stretch. So he's getting hot at the right time, and he looks a lot better than what he did last season, and even to start this season. But for the Jets, they're at home here, and their new starting quarterback, I guess, Mike White, he is out again this week with a ribs injury. He missed last week, and obviously going into a short week, saying this is Thursday Night Football. They didn't want to rush him back. The Jets are 7-7. They're still in the playoff mix, but hey, Zach Wilson is set to start yet again. He was supposed to be their franchise guy. He's been replaced by Mike White, but he's getting an opportunity here again to prove himself on why he wasn't a disappointment at the number 2 overall pick just a few drafts ago. But like I said last year when these two played, the Jets got the upper hand. It was a 26-21 thriller. So hopefully they can replicate that, right? At least that's what Jets fans are hoping for. They need a big win here to stay in the playoff mix. And I mean, for what it is, both teams tonight need a big win. Uh, so tonight's game will be fun for that fact alone, right? And for everything we've said so far, I'm not the biggest fan of the Tennessee Titans. Give me Jacksonville, man. Give me Jacksonville to pull out a win tonight. Zach Wilson proves yet again uh, he's not ready to start at the NFL level. As we move to the Saturday games, the Christmas Eve games, the first game we have is the 11-3 Buffalo Bills going into Chicago Soldier Field to take on the 3-11 Bears. This is in fact a David versus Goliath. This is in fact Justin Fields versus the world, if you want to put it that way. But in this matchup here, um, we'll start with the road team. The Bills are hot right now. They're heavy favorites on the road against the Bears. No surprise there. And they've looked great, both sides of the ball. Tremaine Edmonds has been amazing as of late. And a lot of that has resulted to a 5-game winning streak. They're number 1 seed in the AFC, and they're looking to maintain home field advantage. But it was funny last week, I will say, in their comeback victory against Miami. Um, it was fun last week saying that in the middle of the second quarter, I want to say, the Buffalo Bills fans started throwing snowballs on the field. So, and the game got delayed because of it. It was just very funny. Bills fans are definitely in a class of their own, right? But all in all, the Bills are going to be looking to continue to keep their 1 seed. As I said, I believe if the Bills lose 1 game and the Cincinnati Bengals win out, the Cincinnati Bengals that actually take the number one seed over the Buffalo Bills. And it would be a shame to lose such a lopsided game like this. But for Chicago, for the home team, there's not much here in Chicago aside from Justin Fields. There's been a lot of injuries, just a lack of talent, on this Bears team at all. But Justin Fields, I mentioned it on Tuesday's show. He's the third quarterback to ever in the history of the NFL have 1,000 rushing yards in a single season at the quarterback position. He joins Lamar Jackson and Michael Vick as the only three quarterbacks to ever achieve that feat. So congrats to Justin Fields. He's been amazing this season. And, in this game, he'll make a few plays. Maybe he'll keep it close for the first quarter and a half, maybe even the first half. But it won't be enough. Give me the Bills on the road to take care of business. Next up, we're going to have the 5-9 New Orleans Saints. Going into Cleveland to take on the 6-8 Cleveland Browns. We'll start with the road team here. The Saints have not fared well this season against the AFC North teams. I believe they've lost to the Bengals, Steelers, and the Ravens. So they're struggling against the AFC North, and that fares well for us Browns fans, right? But for the Saints, Andy Dalton, he's going to get one more shot at Cleveland. Obviously, he played with Cincinnati for many, many years early in his career, and he gets to play them yet again in Cleveland. And to my belief, I believe this Saints team, even though they're 5-9, I believe they control their own destiny at this point. And what I mean by controlling their own destiny, because I might say that a lot here in the coming weeks, is I believe if the Saints win the last three games on their schedule, right? I believe they would win their division and represent the NFC South in the playoffs, which is crazy because they are 5-9 as we stand, and it's well under 500. If they win the next three games, they are still under 500. But that's what happens when your division sucks, right? It's never over over until it's over, right? But for the Browns, the home team, they're 2-1 since Deshaun Watson has returned from his suspension, and the defense has, in that stretch that Watson has been back, those three games, the defense of the Cleveland Browns has only allowed about 13.5 points a game. So we're going to be looking to inch one step closer to a 500 record. We still could end at a 9-8 record, which the Browns have a 1% chance to make the playoffs right now. But we, as Cleveland fans, we never give up hope, right? And anything is possible. We need a lot of stuff to go our way. I think we need 5 different things to happen for us to make the playoffs. But it all starts here. It starts here with a big win at home against New Orleans. We send them home and kick them out of playoff contention. And the Browns pick up a much needed win. Hopefully Watson looks a lot better. But next up, we have an AFC South matchup. We have the 1-12-1 Houston Texans going into Tennessee to take on the 500, 7-7 Tennessee Titans. This is without a doubt a trap game for the Titans, but we'll get into that in just a second. For Houston, the road team, they're 1-12-1. They've lost 9 in a row. Their record speaks for itself. They are tanking. They're trying to get a franchise quarterback or a franchise player in this upcoming NFL draft. They're not trying to win this game, right? They're trying to play just good enough to make it look like they're not tanking, right? But for the Titans, they need this one at home, and they need to get their offense going, which might be a struggle, but they need to get it going. Tennessee's they've only averaged about 15 points a game in their last 4 losses, which they're on a 4-game losing streak. So over the last 4 weeks, they're only averaging 15 points a game, which is not nearly enough to compete in the NFL today. And they have 5 turnovers in the last 2 weeks. So in the last 4 weeks, let's just say they haven't played winning football. They need to get back to it this week. But however, it's going to make it hard for them, saying that Ryan Tannehill, their starting quarterback, he may be done for the season. I believe it's an ankle injury, but I believe he might be done for the season, which would lead to rookie Malik Willis stepping in and having to take the control of the offense, right, for the last 3 or so games of the year. If they don't make the playoffs, then they only have 3 games left on the season. So Malik Willis, the biggest question here is, do they trust him enough to throw the ball down the field? Do they trust him to do more than just hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, right? Which they don't have a choice. They're going to have to if they want to make a push for the playoffs, right? But, in this matchup, Houston's defense has forced 7 turnovers the last 3 weeks. Tennessee, they've turned the ball over 5 times in the last 2 weeks. Can Tennessee play a clean game? Is the biggest question for me in this game, right? And when it comes down to it, when we look at both teams, I give the edge to Tennessee because of one guy, one reason, no surprise. They have Derrick Henry. And sometimes that's all you need to win a ball game. And that's really my only rationalization for taking the struggling Tennessee Titans in this ball game. Next up, we have the 7-7 Seattle Seahawks going into KC to take on the 11-3 Chiefs. The Seahawks, they've lost 3 of their last 4 games since their bye week, and the defense has allowed about 29 points a game in that stretch. And it's safe to say that allowing almost 30 points a game is not a recipe for success against anyone in the league, right? But in this matchup, they're playing, let alone Kansas City. They're playing the best offense in the NFL, in my opinion, right? So it's not a recipe for success against anyone, let alone Kansas City. And last Thursday, their second receiver, Tyler Lockett, he injured his pointer finger, and I believe he is out until playoff time if they were to make it. So look for a big Marquise Goodwin game by fantasy players. If you're struggling at receiver, go pick up Marquise Goodwin, man, and start him. Seattle's going to have to put up a lot of points to stay in this ball game, and Kansas City's at home in Arrowhead. They're going to have to put up a lot of points, and you have to assume that DK Metcalf will be doubled for the majority of this ball game. So look for Marquise Goodwin to have another surprisingly good game for the Seahawks. But last week for Kansas City, the home team, they escaped with an overtime victory against those Texans we just talked about, and they should be happy to be back at home. They just had a 3-game road stint where they were 2-1, and right now they're the 2 seed. They're trying to keep pace for the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs, but they actually have the 3rd best odds to get that right now. But hey, they need to do their part, and they need to win the games that are in front of them, right? But no surprise here. Give me Kansas City at home to improve to 12-3. Next up, we have a playoff matchup here. Excuse me. We have the 8-5-1 New York Giants going into Minnesota to take on the 11-3 Minnesota Vikings. This season, as you see on the subtitle there, the Vikings are 1-2 against NFC East opponents this season. So they've struggled with the Giants division. Will that continue? I don't know. We'll get into it. But the Giants, the road team, they are coming off of a huge win last week and a very controversial ending in their Sunday night game against the Commanders last week. And look, I get it, right? From the ref's standpoint, they wanted to let them play. If you're unaware of what I'm talking about, late in the Sunday night football game last week, the Giants played the Washington Commanders, and the Commanders were driving late in that game, and it was a 4th and goal, and the Commanders were trying to throw a ball to, I believe it was Curtis Samuel, right, receiver for the Commanders. A Giants defender was basically hugging the receiver of the Commanders on his back, and there was no penalty called, right? So very controversial ending to that game, but the Giants, hey, they came out on top, and they got a much-needed divisional win, but they have a tough matchup here. They're still in the NFC wildcard mix, and a win on the road here would do them favors, right? It would do a lot for them. It basically put them as a lock in the playoffs, if we're being honest. But Minnesota's not Washington, right? That's what I'm getting at. And they're coming off of, we're talking about Minnesota, they're coming off of the biggest comeback in NFL history. If you're unaware, we talked about it on Tuesday's show, but the Vikings were down 33-0 at halftime last week against the Indianapolis Colts. They ended up coming all the way back took it to overtime, and they won 39-36, completing the biggest comeback in NFL history. So props to Minnesota for never giving up, fighting to the very end. But hopefully this week, I would say for Vikings fans, you would hope that your team doesn't put themselves in that situation again, right? You would hope that they play very clean first half and they're not down 33-0 at halftime, right? But for my fantasy players, I do want to throw this out there very, very quickly. Please go after Marquise Goodwin and not the receiver I'm about to mention. Because last week, when the Vikings were down 33-0, as you can imagine, they had to throw the ball a lot, right? And if you're desperate for a receiver, I would stay away from KJ Osborne. Last week he had like 11 catches for almost 200 yards and a touchdown. Absolutely insane numbers, right? But KJ Osborne is essentially the fourth option in this offense for the Vikings. It's too risky at this point in the year in the fantasy playoffs to pick up a KJ Osborne and play him. I understand desperate times call for desperate measures, but just know that you're playing a big risk playing a KJ Osborne. Um, unless you think that the Vikings will be down 30 again this week. But all in all, give me the Vikings at home to improve to 12-3 as well. Next up, we have the 10-4 red hot Cincinnati Bengals going into New England, Foxborough, to take on the 7-7 Patriots. The Bengals, they're in their top form right now. They've won 6 straight, and their defense has allowed just 88 rushing yards per game in this 6-game winning streak. And also on the offensive side of the ball, their quarterback Joe Burrow, he has 14 touchdowns and just 4 interceptions in this 6-game winning streak. So, hey, this Bengals team is getting hot late in the season, just like they did last year, and they're only getting healthier. T. Higgins, obviously, a couple weeks ago, it was very weird how we only played 1 snap in that game. But T. Higgins, he's back this week. He's back to 100% per the practice reports. And their offense is healthy. Their defense is playing the best that they've played since Burrow has been there. And they're getting hot, like I said, just like they did last season. But for New England, they're coming off of possibly the craziest loss in NFL history, or pretty close to it, last week. If you missed it, we talked about it on Tuesday's show. We explained how the game, how it all ended there. So go check out Tuesday's show. But the biggest question for me in this game for New England is, one, can they get the ground game going? Can they get the run going? And if they can't, do they trust Mac Jones enough to throw the ball downfield? Obviously, it's been covered a lot in the recent weeks with the I can't think of the word right now, right? But the disconnect that works. It's been covered a lot recently. The disconnect between Matt Patricia, the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, and their quarterback Mac Jones, right? Matt Patricia, he is formerly a defensive coordinator for many years. Won a lot of Super Bowls with this New England team. He likes to play a very conservative style of game. It's a lot of short passes, run the ball a lot, and do just enough to win every game, right? Mac Jones, he comes from Alabama. Obviously, it's a college powerhouse, and they threw the ball all the time. I think Mac Jones actually had the record in the college football playoff for most passing yards in a game. Um, Mac Jones, he's coming from a powerhouse of a college that loved to throw the ball, blow people out, and really put the foot on the opponent's neck, right? Matt Patricia, he doesn't like to do that. He likes to play a very conservative style of game, and like I said, do just enough to come out with the victory. So if they can't get this run going, which the Cincinnati's defense has only allowed about 80 yards on the ground every game, if they can't get the run going, the biggest question is, will New England trust Mac Jones enough to air the ball out? I don't know. There's too many questions for New England and not enough action for New England, right? I believe that loss from last week gets to them. The Bengals, they've won 6 straight, make it 7 straight. They go out and get a big win in Foxborough. Next up, we have Detroit, the 7-7 Detroit Lions going into Carolina to take on the 5-9-1 Panthers. It's the game of the week. in my opinion, as far as playoff hopes, right? As far as fan favorite teams. But we'll start with the road team here in the Lions. They have emerged as this season's Cinderella story. After winning 5 of their last 6 games. We talked about this team a lot on Tuesday's show. We cover a lot, on all these shows. So if you missed Tuesday's show, go watch it. It's only about 35 minutes, and I get you guys in and out with as much information as possible, right? But for the Lions, the victory last week against the Jets was one that Detroit usually coughed up in Dan Campbell's time. They usually last season when Dan Campbell was there for his first year, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, I believe they lost like 8 one-possession games. So it was something crazy like that. It was an NFL record. But the one last week, it was a very close game against the Jets. And for a change, the Detroit Lions actually came out with the victory in that game. So, a great game for Detroit. Everyone in America is really rooting for Detroit. But good news for this matchup, right, is Carolina, the Panthers, they obviously love to run the ball. And Detroit is 5-0 when they've allowed 100 rushing yards or less, right? And coincidentally, that 5-0 record has happened in 5 of the last 7 games, and it's happened. They've allowed less than 100 rushing yards in their last 3 games. Sorry, I was kind of everywhere there. Basically, what I'm saying is Detroit has been able to stop the run, and Carolina loves to run the ball. So Detroit's in a good position, right, heading into this game. But for Carolina, they're 4-3 at home this season, and they're still in the NFC South playoff race, which is still crazy, despite their 5-9 record, as I mentioned earlier with the Saints, and we'll get into the Falcons later. But they're just like their division foe in Atlanta. They love to run the ball no matter what. It doesn't matter if they're up by 30, if they're down by 30, if it's a close game, if they need to drive 90 yards in a minute. This Carolina team loves to run the ball, right? And this game's really just going to be a battle of the strengths, right? Carolina's going to run. Detroit's going to try and defend the run, right? Which they've been doing an exceptional job at recently. But the biggest question here is can D'Onta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard for Carolina get going? Can they break one loose? If they can, I can very well see Carolina winning this game. But for America's sake, for Dan Campbell's sake, and I believe just all of us as fans, right? I don't believe Carolina can get that going. And I believe the Cinderella story of the Detroit Lions continues to find some magic. Next up, we have the 5-9 Atlanta Falcons going into Baltimore to take on the 9-5 Baltimore Ravens. Atlanta, they're coming off of a loss last week to New Orleans, which seems meaningless, right? Saying that they're 5-9, but like I said, the Panthers, Saints, and the Panthers, the bottom 3 teams in the NFC South, I'll put it that way. They're all at 5-9. They're all still in the playoff mix, as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are only 6-8. So they're all only 1 game back. The division is up for grabs, and I believe that loss last week for Atlanta could hurt them in the long run, right? As you know, Marcus Mariota, the former quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, he isn't with the team for the remainder of the season. It is rumored that it is because of the birth of his baby, which, if that is the reason, I understand. But if it is also just because he was replaced by the backup quarterback, then we have a different story on our hands, right? But like I said, Desmond Ridder, the rookie quarterback out of Cincinnati, he is set to start for his second career start. And, he looked okay last week, but a lot of his throws were forced to Drake London. I believe he had 11 targets last week, and they only threw the ball like 18 times. So a good majority of his passes are going to Drake London, which for fantasy sakes, I would understand the play of Drake London, right? Saying that the volume is there. But it's very risky, right? It's very risky. So only if you're in an extreme emergency, do not start Drake London. Save yourself the headache. But it is just funny, as I mentioned just with Carolina, Atlanta and Carolina, they just love to run the ball. It doesn't matter what situation the game is. They will most likely give the ball to one of their three backs, right? But for the Ravens, they're at home here, and they desperately need Lamar Jackson back. They had a good control of the AFC North. Lamar Jackson went down, and they're losing the lead just like they did last season. And also coming off of a loss to the Browns, where they kind of looked helpless on both sides of the ball. It's hard. I believe if Lamar Jackson were to suit up this week, which it's uncertain at this point, um, well, one, it is a must win, right, for the Ravens if they want to compete for the AFC North, if they want to stay with Cincinnati and try and win the division. But if Lamar Jackson were to come back, I believe the Ravens blow the doors open on Atlanta. But if Tyler Huntley is there, I believe it'll be a close win, and I believe the Ravens defense will have to step up and play a huge part in overwhelming Desmond Ridder. And I believe no matter who the quarterback is, the Ravens will get a much needed win in this ball game. Next up, we have the 7-6-1 Washington Commanders going into San Fran to take on the 10-4 third seed Niners. Washington, as I mentioned earlier with the New York Giants game, Washington's coming off of a disappointing loss last week to the Giants. They're still in the playoffs, but they need to fight. Now it is the time where they need to step up and they need to get some big time wins, right? And they might get it here. Facing a third string quarterback, they might get a much, much needed win here against San Fran. But the thing about this Washington team, and the reason why they lost last week, in my opinion, and the reason why they don't have a better record, because I believe this Washington team is a quarterback away from being serious contenders. Um, but I believe the reason is that they don't have this explosive offense that is going to blow you out of the water, right? But this Washington team, it seems like every week they go in with the game plan of we want to grind out this win. We want to we want to win by one score or 10 points. We barely want to win this game, but it seems like that's their game plan every week, and it's very weird to watch this Washington team play. Unfortunately for them and their style of play, the team that they're playing this week is probably the best in the league at it, right? But the 49ers, they're coming off of that Thursday night win last week. They've had extra time to prepare for this game, and the story for San Francisco, I mean, that their defense hasn't allowed more than 275 plus yards in the last 7 weeks. And I believe there was a 4 or 5 game stretch within this 7 game winning streak that they didn't allow a point in the second half, right? And so this Niners defense has been amazing. Brock Purdy has stepped in, and Brock Purdy has proven to the world that it's really just a plug and play system for any quarterback, really. But I don't want to take that away from Brock Purdy. He's looked okay in his time there, and hey, I mean, we have to put some respect on Brock Purdy's name. He stepped up and he's delivered, right? But like I said, San Fran, they're on a 7 game winning streak. I believe in this game Washington has to go out of the way. I think they have to have some explosive plays. I believe they also have to be perfect in this game, both sides of the ball. And a part of me wants to pick Washington here. On Monday or on Tuesday, when I come to this podcast, if Washington is to come out with this victory, I'm going to be very upset with myself because right now I really want to pick Washington to come out with this win. But I just can't do it. Right now I can't do it, and I believe it'll be a close game, but San Fran will get a late game touchdown or a late game field goal, ending the game like 17-16 or 17-14, something like that. But next up we have probably the titled game of the week with the 13-1 Philadelphia Eagles going into Dallas to take on the 10-4 Cowboys. Um, the biggest question here, as you see on the subtitle, is this MVP run for Jalen Hurts? Is it because of Jalen Hurts' ability and his talent, or is it because of the team around him? Right? And I think this question, we'll get into it in a second, but I think this game plays a lot um, into how this offseason how the awards will play out, right? But the Cowboys, they've won the last 4 meetings again at home against I can't talk right now. Hold on. Let me restart, right? This proves to you guys I do not edit my podcast. But the Cowboys, the last 4 times they've played the Eagles at home, they have won those matchups. So there we go. But the last 3 wins that they've had at home, they've been in blowout fashion. You can even argue the fourth one 4 years ago could have been, but I just stuck with 3. So when they're at home against this Eagles team, they win big, right? That's the story here. But Dallas, the biggest question here is how do they bounce back after that loss last week against Jacksonville, which they had 500 plus yards, right? So the Cowboys, they had a lead in that game and they really blew that game um, once they were up by 2 or so scores, right? But here, Philadelphia, they're going to face Dak Prescott instead of Cooper Rush, like they did earlier in the year. Dak Prescott is 7-3 against the Eagles in his career. Pretty good stats, to say the least, but I won't read those out. And Jalen Hurts, as I kind of just mentioned, he's going to be out of this game with a shoulder injury, and his timetable to return is uncertain at this point. But we'll get to see if this team's success is because of Jalen Hurts or is it because of the overall team and the talent around Jalen Hurts, right? And like I said, believe it or not, I believe this game plays a huge part in the MVP award, right? It is a quarterback award, whatever. But even though I give the award to Patrick Mahomes or even a Joe Burrow over Jalen Hurts, I mean, if this Eagles team comes out, if they come out and they struggle in this game against the Cowboys, I believe the voters would give this award to Jalen Hurts if the Eagles were to finish, let's say, with 2 losses, right? But for that reason, with Jalen Hurts being out and Gardner Minshew, who is a very capable starter in this league, I still, give me Dallas. Give me Dallas at home. Dak Prescott loves the Eagles, and he improves to 8-3 as a starter against those Eagles, right? Even though the Eagles are the best overall record team in football. Next, we have the 6-8 Las Vegas Raiders going into Pittsburgh to take on the 6-8 Steelers. This is the 50th and this will be on Sunday or Saturday. It will be the 50-year anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Like I said, Pittsburgh's going to celebrate that. The legendary 13-7 victory against the Raiders 50 years ago. But unfortunately, the Steelers will be having this celebration without the man who made the infamous catch. Franco Harris, the legendary running back for Pittsburgh, Hall of Fame running back. He passed away just a few days ago at the age of 72. So I send my condolences on the behalf of me and my listeners. I'm sending my condolences to his family and his friends. It's very sad, right, to see a legend pass. But Franco Harris, obviously he made the Immaculate Reception. It sucks that for the 50th anniversary, he won't be there for that. But regardless, like I said, I'm sending my condolences to his family. But Las Vegas, they're on the road here. They're coming off one of the most incredible game-ending plays in NFL history. We talked about that earlier. But they're still in the playoff mix, despite, that loss to the Rams, I will say. That 98-yard drive by Baker Mayfield, it screwed their season, right? And though that they're not technically eliminated here, uh, that they're pretty much out of the conversation, right, for the playoffs. For the Steelers at home, they've won 3 of their last 4 games. They haven't given up 17 points. They've given up 17 points or less in that stretch. And I believe this game will turn out to be a defensive battle. And though I want to give Davante Adams and Darren Waller the edge here, I can't, man. Surprisingly, I'm going to give Kenny Pickett and the Steelers the edge here at home in a defensive battle. And this time they're going to win in honor of Franco Harris. Moving on to Christmas Day football. Miami's back at home, but can they find a way can they find a way back into the win column, right? I'm not trying to be funny, but it is what it is, right? This is the first game on Christmas Day, as I mentioned. I believe it'll start at 1 o'clock. And the Packers, they're the road team here. They're clinging on to their playoff hopes in the NFC. And I don't believe it'll be easy. On the road in Miami, sure, the Dolphins are on a 3-game losing streak, but all of those games were on the road, and they were all losses to potential Super Bowl contenders. So Miami's been playing, great teams, and they've just come up a bit short. Green Bay's defense, I believe in this game they're going to give up way too many plays, way too many miscues. Sure, yeah, Jair Alexander, Pro Bowl corner, he will be shadowing Tyreek Hill for the majority of this game, right? Obviously with safety help because it is Tyreek Hill, but they still have Jalen Waddle, this Miami team. They still have Raheem Mostert. They still have other playmakers. And if we know one thing about Mike McDaniel, he's going to find a way to get his playmakers the ball no matter what defense is being played, right? So I believe Miami gets a much-needed win as they look to not fall out of the playoff conversations. Right now they're the 7th seed. Hopefully they can stay that way. But Denver at 4-10 is going into the Los Angeles to take on the 4-10 Rams. And for this one, it's simple. I want Russell Wilson to play this game, and we'll get that to a minute. But hey, 4:30 on Christmas Day. It's what everybody in the world wants to see. Brett Rypien versus Baker Mayfield. It is a dream Christmas matchup. I'm just joking, obviously. But, obviously the NFL made this matchup before the season started when all the stars on both teams were healthy and the belief that both teams would be somewhat relevant, right? But this actually works out better for fans, right? This works out better for families that we have two subpar teams going head-to-head in the middle of Christmas Day, right? I believe this game starts at like 4:30. It should end around 8. It's the perfect time for dinner. Usually most families will eat dinner from 4:30 to 8, somewhere in that time span. So that's the perfect time to eat dinner, hang out with friends and family, and get away from football for a second. But biggest thing here, if Russell Wilson plays this game, I believe the Broncos win on the road. But if he doesn't, give me the better coach and give me the better quarterback in this case. If Brett Rypien were to play for the Broncos, give me the Rams at home to pick up a win if Russell Wilson doesn't play. Next up, we have the final game on Sunday. Can old St. Tom deliver on Christmas night? I thought that was pretty cool. But we'll start with Arizona in this one. They are the home team. They already have their eyes on next season. They've suffered tons of injuries this year. They had a couple suspensions as well. But, maybe they can play spoiler. Maybe the players, they get up and they're like, hey, this is Tom Brady's last season or potentially his last season, right? Let's go out there and play spoiler to his playoff hopes. And maybe that could be all that they need, right? But for Tom Brady and this road team, they've lost 3 of their last 4 games, and they've lost their last 4 road games, on top of that. So this game here, even though they're going into play a Colt McCoy team, this isn't a layup. Colt McCoy has beaten Tom Brady before. As a Browns fan, I have to mention that. Do not get on me for that. I had to mention it. But, this Cardinals team, even though they only averaged 15.5 points in their last 4 losses, I believe Tom Brady, they're not going to come out and it's not going to be a flawless game, right? I believe this will be a close game. I believe Tampa will squeak out a win at the very end. And hey, it's Tom Brady. That's what he does, is deliver, at least most of the time. Monday Night Football, we have the Los Angeles Chargers going into Indy to take on the 4-9-1 Colts. The Colts, they blew a 33-point lead last week. We've mentioned it a ton of times in this show and last Tuesday's show. But they're going into, yet again, another primetime game with interim head coach Jeff Saturday, who last week I would say if they came out with that win and they stayed the course, let's say they won 40-7 or 40-14, I would be sitting here saying that Jeff Saturday might deserve a job for next season. But losing that game is kind of the icing on the cake. We got a couple games left of Jeff Saturday. But to make matters worse, In that game last week in the first half, Jonathan Taylor, star running back for the Colts, he suffered a high ankle sprain. He's done for the year. So rest up, Jonathan Taylor. We'll see you next year, right? But for the Chargers, they're heating up right now. They're hot right now. They've won 2 straight, and a large part of that is because Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, their star receivers, they're both healthy and they're both playing. And this offense has averaged, the 2 receivers have averaged about 170 yards combined the last 2 weeks, right? So Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are killing it, and Justin Herbert, he's starting to look a lot better as a result, having his offense finally be healthy. And no surprise here, the Chargers close out Christmas week of football with a win here. On your screen now, you're going to see my picks of the week. Last week, you see we went 10-6. Not too shabby. I mean, it was not where I wanted it. A lot of games I could have went my way, but they didn't. And I'm still not mad. 10-6 is still a really good record. Regardless, on the season, you see we've gotten about 60.5% of the games right, just about. But here on the right side of your screen, you'll see my picks of the week, and I'll read them off to you. I'll read off my winners, right? We'll say that. So for Thursday night, give me Jacksonville, which is tonight. For Saturday, give me Buffalo, Cleveland, Tennessee, Kansas City, Minnesota, Cincy, Detroit, Baltimore, San Fran, Dallas, and Pittsburgh. On Christmas Day, give me Miami at home, and then Denver and Tampa on the road. And then Monday night to close out Christmas week, give me the Chargers. Hey, I mean, we're approaching playoff time. I'm very excited to see how this season ends. But hey, this weekend I have my fantasy playoffs, and I am very, very worried, but excited at the same time. But that's going to do it for today's show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys are still enjoying the new graphics. I'm trying my best to make everything as visually appealing as possible, right? But right now we're about 47 minutes in. We're a little bit more than I wanted today, but that's what happens when we just get excited about football and we go off on tangents. But that's going to do it. I'll see you guys Tuesday. Enjoy your weekends. If you're still in the fantasy football playoffs, good luck to you. I am very worried for this weekend. Money is on the line, and maybe it's not healthy, but I will be in front of that TV screen on Saturday and Sunday, or at least for as much as I can, right, with Christmas. And I'm going to be watching every single play, to say the least. But good luck to you guys. Have fun this weekend, and enjoy Christmas, man. Enjoy Christmas. I will see you guys on Tuesday, which I'll recap you guys on anything special I do. And have a very Merry Christmas for those that celebrate it. I'll see you guys Tuesday. Enjoy your weekend. Good luck to all your fantasy teams. Stay happy and healthy. Eat some food. Open some presents. Enjoy your time off. I'll see you guys Tuesday. Peace, love, and hugs. I'm out.